Good morning, everyone, and welcome to my presentation. My name is Iana, and today I want to talk about what cognitive neuroscience is and how it can be adapted to online learning. But before we start, I would like you to meet my friend Lynn. Lynn is a young instructional designer, and she has just finished recently her first project, the online learning course. She's super thrilled to find out what were the results of her students at the final assignment. Oh no, it seems that her students didn't do very well, had a problem with the course, and many of them failed. Lynn is wondering what could go wrong. In the end, she decides to contact an expert on learning design, and she is thinking where to gain advice. Should she talk to the person who is an expert on brain, on learning? In the end, she decides to contact an expert on both. She calls Professor Moore, her old college instructor, who is a cognitive neuroscientist. But how can he help Lynn? Let's find out together. In order to do this, we need to find out what cognitive neuroscience is. According to the definition from the MIT University Department of Brain and Cognitive Science, cognitive neuroscience mainly concerns with the processes that happen in our brain, in our mind, and how are they connected. Because of this, cognitive neuroscience employs the research from many different areas: language, computation, artificial intelligence, neuroscience, philosophy. But for the purpose of e-learning design, we will focus only on a few areas, mostly coming from the cognitive psychology, memorization, comprehension, and metacognition. Let's start with the first one. When people talk about different processes related to memory, they might drop the following statements. They might say that they have good memory, bad memory, they are losing their memory, or they improve their memory by doing something. For example, learning poetry. All of these things are considered neuromyths. These are the things that public believes about the brain, but are not necessarily correct. Why, would you ask? Simply because there are 5 different types of memory, and if you are good at one of them, doesn't necessarily mean that you can memorize other things as easily. For the purpose of this presentation, we will focus on only 2 of them: working memory and semantic memory. These types of memories sometimes can be called short and long-term memory. Working memory stores the information for a short period of time, and we need it for simple functioning in everyday life. It is very interconnected to attention and comprehension. Semantic memory is the long-term memory. It stores concepts, definitions, mental models, and it takes some time before the information can actually move from the short-term memory, working memory, to the semantic memory. So what are the possible strategies that we can use, the educators can use, to improve the memorization processes in our students? There are 3 strategies that are especially popular, but of course, the amount is endless. These 3 strategies are interleaving, spaced practice, and dual coding. Interleaving simply means that sometimes you need to change the order of activities for your students. If the order is completely random, or if the order is very predictable, our brain does not seem to focus very well. So this is a good thing to change the order of activities, but in a more or less predictable fashion. Spaced practice means that you need to repeat the learned content again and again and again. It is very important to review the material within 3, 10, 30, and 60 days. This is exactly how much time a student needs before he can activate semantic memory to store one or another concept. The third strategy is called dual coding, and it is very popular nowadays in the age of the media because dual coding tells us that we need to use verbal and visual representation of the content. Read between the lines, it means that we need to use videos, infographics, graphs, charts, as well as text in order to balance it out and make our content more comprehensible. The only thing that we need to remember is that sometimes when we produce too much content, our students can experience cognitive overload. This means the capacity of our working memory is exceeded and we cannot store any more information. For this purpose, you need to carefully choose which content you will represent in which form and be very careful not to overload your students. How can these strategies be used in real life? For example, Duolingo, a very famous language learning app, reminds you to practice the content that you have already studied. Other apps, such as Elevate, the brain training app, offers you to learn different concepts in different sequence. This is called interleaving. The second domain of cognitive neuroscience that is very applicable to learning is comprehension. Comprehension happens when we establish connections between concepts in our mind, producing bigger and stronger mental models. Because of this, it is very important to use certain strategies to help our students understand the information. Students can sometimes think that they memorized something, therefore they learned it, without actual understanding. To improve comprehension, there are several different techniques that are suggested by learning designers. One of them is elaboration. Elaboration asks students to actively use the content that they learned by performing certain tasks. In other way, it can be sometimes called project-based learning or real-life problem solving. If you truly want your content to stick with your students, you will think about a few activities in your e-learning course to include, which will actually activate what is called active recall and help students understand the content better. The other strategy is to include a variety of external sources. Again, remember about the cognitive overload to build stronger mental models. Finally, it is a good idea to put unfamiliar content in the realistic everyday context by providing real life examples and learning situations. What can you do? For example, you can include checkpoints or did you know or heads up interactive logos, which will provide more information or tell students how the information that they are learning relates to something they already know. So, what are real life examples of the comprehension strategies that companies use to increase their students' understanding? For example, some courses on Coursera include notes to the lecture where they upload additional materials. Another learning app called Mimo, which is a coding app, allows students to apply the skills that they just learned, the strategies, the coding language, to build some pages, projects, therefore consolidate material. The Spanish learning app called Lyrica allows students to learn the material through songs and tries to connect these to the real life situations by providing lyric facts, the facts from real life that are somehow connected from the context in the songs. The third and final area that I would like to focus on today is metacognition. Metacognition simply means thinking about thinking. It helps us analyze how we learn and create the relative strategies based on the processes that happen in our brain. Some of the metacognition strategies that many companies employ are, for example, rating your own confidence, or controlling the level of difficulty, or asking students to make voluntary choices. Let them choose what they want to focus on. The real life examples could be, for example, the app called Brainscape that asks you to rate every flashcard based on how confident you are in using this word. Additionally, the app as Duolingo asks you to take the placement test when you start to control the difficulty. Same happens with another e-learning app called Busuu. So what do we know so far? Cognitive neuroscience studies the brain. It also studies the mind. It studies the processes in the mind by studying the brain. And the three areas that you can use for personal research and for the e-learning design are the areas of memorization, comprehension, and metacognition. The final bonus that I would like to share with you is the story of Lynn. The story of Lynn is called scenario-based learning, and this derives from the situated learning theory that tells us that we learn the best from the context, from the real life situations with the real life choices. So next time you want to try something really interesting in your e-learning design, research and try to utilize scenario-based learning in your designs. Thank you very much for the presentation. If you have any questions, please contact me on this email. Me and Lynn are saying thank you to all of you. And I'm ready for your questions.